Hello guys, welcome to another session of Cassadara Learning. Today we are going to continue with the object-oriented programming concepts. So far we had seen about what are objects and classes and what are its properties and functionalities, how do we define them and all that, right? So now we are going to continue and elaborate on that concept. So what we are going to see today is about access specifiers. What are access specifiers? How do we use them? And then we are going to learn about accessors and mutators of a class. Alright, so how do we define access specifiers? What are access specifiers? Access specifiers are basically some keywords that we specify. For example, when we define a class, we define their members and methods, which is synonymous to properties and functionalities. So properties, we can refer them as members, and functionalities, we can refer them as methods of a class. So while defining properties or functionalities, we can assign a keyword in front of them to restrict their access or to manage their access outside of the class definition. So whether it is accessible outside of the class definition or it is completely not accessible, or are there any restricted access to it. So all these things can be defined using the keywords that can be specified before our property and functionality definition of a class. So what are the keywords? The first one is private. So when I define a variable of a class as private, it means that that variable cannot be accessed outside of the scope of that particular class, which means any other object or function cannot access those variables directly. So this is the first keyword, private. The second one is public. When you define a variable as public, or a class or a method or function as public, it means it can be accessed from anywhere outside the scope. It can be accessed by anywhere, by anybody, like other classes, other objects, other functions can access and call those functions or access the values of those variables. So in this case, this is called as, this will be defined as public. Okay, let me instead of just speaking in the air, I'll show you how to define it. All right. In the last session, we wrote a class called student, if you remember. Here we defined three properties: roll number, name and grade for a student. So these are the properties of a student, and we define types for each: roll number, name and grade. Correct? So if I want to specify access specifiers, I have to generally all properties we will keep it as private just for security reasons. So I'll say private int roll number. This is how we need to specify the access restriction. Private string name, private string grade. And for the methods that we use to access that class, we define them as public. See, we already had defined that keyword public, and this is the value, return values of the method, and then the method name or the function name. Functions and methods, I'll be using the words I'll be using interchangeably, both are the same. So This is how we specify access specifiers. What are the other access specifiers we have? Like earlier I gave without any keyword, right? So that is one special kind of access specifier. So, or the default access specifier without a keyword. So what does that mean? It means that any class, so private is completely private. So think about it. You have a secret which you don't share with anybody. That is private, right? Whereas public is like a universal truth. Everybody knows about it, like sun rises in the east. Those kind of things we can define as public. So everybody should know about it, right? So those kind of information are public. The default key without any keyword, when we define that, it is called as a package specific access. So what is a package? A package is, in technical terms, it's nothing but a folder. It's nothing but a directory of an operating system. So in which we will keep all the class files. So what we do generally is we organize all the class files into multiple folders, a folder, a subfolder, and then subfolder. So we have classes everywhere, and then we organize this as one particular hierarchy set of classes which does a specific job, right? So this is called a package. So when you define a variable without any keyword, that variable will be access to all the other classes from within the same package or same folder, right? So any class that is defined in the same folder can access the variable from this class. So that is package specific access. And there is one more. It is called as protected. A protected is an access specifier that is used to restrict access to a family of classes. So a family of classes is something we need to see in the future, because we have to look at the concept called inheritance. How do we define classes as parent, children, etc., etc.? Only then you will understand the hierarchy of the family and how the protected access allows access to a specific variable within that particular hierarchy of classes. We'll see about that later in detail, but these are the 4 access specifiers that are available in Java. All right. So to summarize, private, which completely restricts access to within the class only. Public, it doesn't have any restriction. It allows the variable or function to be accessed from anywhere by anybody. Default is package specific access. I will also explain in detail about packages in the future. So it's package specific access. Basically, to technically understand it, it's like a class. A variable of a class can be, if a variable of a class can be accessed by all other classes inside the same folder, then it's called package specific access. You have to define a specific way to define all these classes belongs to the same package. But yeah, typically it is a folder. All right, so that is all about it. Let's see the next. This accessors and mutators. Accessors are basically functions that allow access to some restricted variables in a class. So again, in our same example, let's see, we have a roll number which is private. which means anybody outside from the class cannot access this roll number, right? Now, if I want to access it, I have to access it only through this get roll number function. This is a public function. So this get roll number function allows access to the roll number by taking and returning the value of the roll number. So this type of function, which allows restricted access to a private or a restricted variable inside a class, is called an accessor. So accessors can also be called as a getter function. Accessors or getter functions are basically defined in such a way that if the variable name is roll number, we will define that as get roll number. We will prefix that variable name with a get, and then we will return the value. So this is basically an accessor. So the idea behind this accessor is that instead of directly accessing the location, memory location where it is stored, we access it through a function, so that if I want to restrict, if I want to add some validation or add some security routines to it, we can do it here. Who can access a roll number? Those kind of validations can be done here. That is the whole idea. Got it? The next thing is mutators. Mutators are setter functions. So typically functions that starts with a set and then followed by the variable name, which is used to modify the value that is already defined, or to set a value inside a private variable of a class is called a mutator. So when you define a class, it is always preferred that you define all your variables as private, and then you define accessors and mutators with appropriate validations to it. Here in this example, I haven't done any validation or anything here, but if we want, we can add it in the future. That way it is easily maintainable. The class code is easily maintainable, and we have a standard way of doing it, a standard way of doing it. So this is the purpose of accessors. It starts with a get followed by the variable name, and mutators starts with a set followed by the variable name and a value to assign. So this is how we define accessors and mutators. Hope you get the idea how to define a class, how to specify access specifiers, and then what are accessors and mutators. Let's go to summary. Access specifiers are keywords specified to define access restrictions for the members and methods of a class. In other words, properties and functionalities of a class. So what are the access specifiers we saw? We saw private, public, the default one without defining any keywords, and the fourth one is protected. Alright, I will elaborate on the protected and the default one in the future. Again, I will be elaborating it. So if you are confused about it, don't worry, I'll explain it in future sessions. Accessors are getter functions that are used to get the property value of an object, provided the property value is access restricted. And mutators are setter functions used to set a property value of an object. This is a short session. I hope you enjoyed the session. Try defining classes and create objects, and then consolidate your concepts of object-oriented programming. We are going to, for the next another 2 sessions, we are going to continue and elaborate on object-oriented programming further. So these are going to be very short sessions, and but these are the most important ones to form an idea of how we program in the future, right? All the best, guys. Let's meet you in the next session. See you later. Bye.